Was there anything, though, that was not accomplished that you would have liked to have seen out of this meeting?
Well, I'm certainly curious to engage the administration in the trade conversation and how we continue to level the playing field, particularly as a representative here in Michigan, where our auto industry just has concluded some pretty historic negotiations, really setting the standards for workers across not only this country, but across the world. And so, how do we compete as a manufacturing destination? How do we make sure that the raw materials, the critical minerals that we get access to are at fair price and allow us to compete? That's what I'm interested in and part of my role on the select committee. And I'd also say, look, it has been one heck of a year with regard to U.S.-China relations, starting with the balloon, carrying forward to cyber attacks, broken meetings, some trust breakdown, and now this week, this very historic meeting. And I applaud these leaders. Certainly, we don't agree with China on everything, but one of the other resounding messages is that we're going to have to find ways to work together as economic powerhouses. And particularly for both of our countries' interests, that opportunity for dialogue is critical. It is very important. But let's take it to the next stage. Let's do trade.
Well, we're hearing a lot about dictator and his recent remark on that. The president was asked last night if he still thinks that the president of China is a dictator. He said, well, he is one, following his choice to use that word a couple of weeks back at a fundraiser. Congresswoman, is it possible to partner to the extent that you're talking about with a dictator? Do you agree with him?
I've been thinking a lot about this because here we are right on the heels of a new marker in time, 25 years nearly into this century. Global orders shifting, changing, certainly economies are changing. And not to get overly philosophical on the show, but I would say that we cannot normalize brutality. We cannot normalize that there is a Uyghur genocide going on in China and that business executives aren't allowed to talk about it. We can't normalize that the uptick of Chinese business leaders are now being disappeared in their own country. We saw that certainly with a tennis star. We have to go into this with eyes wide open. We also have to face the reality that our supply chains and our economies are tied together. China was allowed into the WTO. We can't go back into time and change that and reverse course. I've heard directly from the makers of the Apple iPhone that they can't produce iPhones or any type of smartphone anywhere else in the world. So this is sort of a toggle, right? It's not justifying, it's knowing what we're up against and who we're dealing with.
Of course, Congresswoman, it is one of the geopolitical challenges that the U.S. is dealing with, but there's many other geopolitical challenges around the world, including the ongoing conflict in Ukraine with Russia and, of course, Israel's war with Hamas. The continuing resolution that your body and the Senate successfully passed this week didn't include funding for either Israel or Ukraine. What do you think a realistic timeline is to get that passed?
This is incredibly disappointing. That we have not passed an aid package, particularly for Israel in one of the gravest, most serious moments that this country has faced, certainly since the Yom Kippur War. And we need to step up and support our allies. The running theme here is that democracies are under attack. You've got Ukraine being invaded again by an autocracy. You have Israel that has been attacked by a terrorist operation with links to Iran and certainly with funding from Iran. And that needs to be put at bay. Democracy needs to be able to thrive. Now, we, as it relates to China, have been battling for 25 years plus how to bring them along. How to get on the same page. And that hasn't happened, which is why, yes, the president doesn't need to concede that Xi isn't a dictator. I believe he is as well. But we also can't just have no dialogue and no conversation. And what we want to avoid is further military attacks on democracy. And that is why Taiwan is also on my mind, and why I want to see an aid package come forward that invests in Ukraine, invests in Israel, and invests in Taiwan.
We have to ask you about what's going on in Detroit quickly, Congresswoman. I'm looking at a tweet right now, or an X, from Elon Musk. Tweets a photograph of himself shaking hands with President Xi. It says, "May there be prosperity for all." I know that workers at the UAW are concerned about prosperity, and they ratified a contract today at GM. You've been in the middle of this. You've walked the picket line. I know that this impacts a lot of folks in your district in Michigan. Will this lead to ratifications for the other two, Ford and Stellantis?
Well, we've certainly seen the business leader getting possessed by Twitter to the degree that they lose sight of their mission at hand. And I'm thinking about a unfortunate twice impeached president. So in terms of how Elon Musk decides to spend his time, I find it really quite questionable, given that he supposedly runs several multi-billion-dollar businesses, and one that he just crashed into the ground. Or seemingly crashed into the ground. But I will say this, I remain really optimistic about what is going to come from Ford and Stellantis. These negotiations were tough, that led to a long strike, an unprecedented strike. It showcased the strength of our workers. And now what you see across the auto industry are wage increases in a time when inflation is very real. And so I think we're going to see these deals get ratified, and certainly continue to respect the process.
Finally, Congresswoman, speaking of process, of course, there was a ethics committee report on Congressman George Santos, the Republican from New York, released earlier today, in which they said, and this is a partial quote, Santos sought to fraudulently exploit every aspect of his House candidacy for his own personal financial profit. It goes on to say he sustained all of this through a constant series of lies to his constituents, donors, and staff about his background and experience. Of course, the chair of the Ethics Committee, Chairman Guest, has said he will be putting an expulsion resolution on the floor tomorrow. What is your degree of confidence that Republicans would actually vote to oust Mr. Santos?
Well, look, their political reality is that they have a tight majority, and it is only getting tighter. We just swore in a new Democrat member of Congress, Gabe Amo, the first person of color to represent Rhode Island in the United States Congress in their 200-plus year history, which was a really exciting moment in our Congress. And certainly if Mr. Santos gets expelled, it only makes their majority tighter. And Lord knows if we take more speaker votes, I certainly want to cast that vote for Hakeem Jeffries and see him become the Speaker of the House if such an event would occur. But I'll say this on a very serious note with regard to Mr. Santos and his illegal behavior and activities. It is wholly unbecoming of a member of Congress to do what he did, and a candidate for Congress to do what he did. You cannot abuse campaign contributions. The ethics report is damning. Mr. Guest's resolution should be treated seriously. I plan to vote for it. And if we do see Mr. Santos expelled, he will be the 6th member in the history of the body to be expelled. Yeah. So it's serious. It's unfortunate that he got as far as he did, and we have to deal with it.